The views and opinions of this podcast do not reflect the views and opinions of the United States government, the Department of the Interior, the Department of Defense, the Department of Agriculture, the United States Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or any private, municipal, county, or state firefighting organization, any law enforcement agency, any medical provider, or any contractor employed by any federal agency. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Anchor Point Podcast, episode number 7. Once again, thank you guys for rating us on iTunes and tagging us in photos, spreading the word, and telling your friends about the old podcast here. So, thank you guys once again. Today on the show, I got Dr. Randy Brooks. He is over at the University of Idaho, and his official title is Dr. Randall Brooks, Extension Professor of Forestry and Extension Forestry Specialist. And he's also in the fire. So, he's got a lot of skin in the game, and he's got some pretty groundbreaking research. He's pretty much writing the book, as far as research goes, on wildland fire fatigue and their sleep patterns. So, you can definitely check that out, and check out his webinar. It's pretty badass. It's super informative, and it's called, just Google search for Assessing Wildland Firefighter Sleep and Fatigue While on Fire Assignments. And that's over at nrfirescience.org. So, I am super stoked about this, and we kind of go down some rabbit holes and nerd out a little bit on the sciencey McScience stuff. So, without further ado, Dr. Randall Brooks, welcome to the Anchor Point.
Try to stay close to my mic, so
that right there is perfect.
Okay.
All right, man. Well, yeah. I mean, shit. You just want to get into it?
Let's go.
Okay. Now I got to get your title right. It's Dr. Randy Brooks, University of Idaho Extension Service Forestry and Forestry Specialist and Professor of Forestry. Correct?
Yep. I'm actually a forestry professor, but I'm the extension forestry and fire specialist. And that just means I take some of the research we do and I extend it to the public, to our grassroots people. I do forestry and I do fire. As you can tell, I'm getting into the fire arena.
Do you have any fire experience?
I do not wildland firefighting. I grew up down south, and we had land. We were always prescribed burning. Everybody in the South, prescribed burning is just, if you don't do it, your neighbor would have done it for you. So I've done a lot of prescribed burning, but never any wildland firefighter experience.
All right, but still, you're helping us out, so it's all good. And you have 2 sons, you said, in wildland fire.
I actually have one son right now that's in wildland fire. At the time that I got started, I had 2 sons, a son-in-law, 2 cousins, and one of my cousin's daughters actually fighting fire. So, and they're all agency. So I've got skin in the game, so to speak. You've heard that old saying, dogs in the fight.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's why, that's one of the reasons I'm doing this.
So you're pretty connected with, this is near and dear to your heart, so.
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, if we can just take a step back, and I can tell you why I got started on this.
Yeah.
It all happened with the Twisp Washington incident in 2015, and I had one of my boys was there at the fire, and one of the young men that perished was actually, he had been 2 weeks before that. I was actually over there talking to him about coming to get his master's degree under me, and he was pretty fired up about it, and so it hit really close to home from that aspect as well. And then having one of my boys there at the time that the incident happened. And I've had, for those that caught the webinar, the survivor, Daniel Lyons, I've had some pretty good conversations with him, and that young man is a hero in my mind. He's an outstanding motivational speaker too,
Oh yeah.
and so he's got. I just was messaging with him last week about using his name as part of my inspiration for doing this research. He's like, "Yeah, man, do it."
Yeah, I
So,
love that guy, man. He is so cool and he's so down to earth, man. And
oh,
the
I've
shit.
never met anyone more humble and he never. We were talking about what we're getting off the subject now, but he was he never questioned why it happened to him. And it'd be easy for someone to just fall into some kind of a funk or a depression and wonder what's going on. But that he motivates me, man. He motivates me.
Yeah. That guy is awesome, man, and he does so much for the wildland community too. Last year, actually, he there was a burnover incident here in the state of Nevada, and he actually flew over to Salt Lake to the burn center and visited those dudes in the hospital.
Oh man,
That's
that gives me chills. It's just yeah. His funny thing is, this goes back. My wife was in a head-on collision and almost killed. She spent a long time over in Harborview Hospital, and he actually had one of the same reconstructive surgeons that my wife had.
oh
So
no shit.
we've got that connection there, and he's interested in helping anybody,
Oh yeah, the dude's got
not
a
just.
heart of
I
gold.
mean, he's a wildland firefighter, but
Yeah, they're kind of like Marines. Once a once a wildland
once,
firefighter, it
yeah,
never dies.
yeah, that's right, that's
There's
right.
no such thing as a ex wildland
Yeah,
firefighter.
no kidding. But anyway, as a result of that accident, I was talking actually to my grad student. I've got a grad student on this project right now. She did a pilot project for her master's degree, and now she's getting her PhD. And we've expanded this. We've got pretty much all the crews different types of crews that are wearing these Fitbit, or not Fitbits, but these Redibands that look like Fitbits.
Hmm.
And her and I, after that Twisp incident, we got to wondering what was the cause of some of these accidents, and we started digging around and started looking at the information and how I think you've seen the trends since the 60s. The fatalities have been on the increase, a steady rise. I think we're close to 18, about 18, averaging 18 a year. And then some of the research, the University of Idaho, we got a top-notch fire ecology program up there. We got a lot of our students that are majoring in fire ecology. I have about 17 advisees that are fighting fire this summer. So that's another motivational thing for me, is to try to keep all these young men and women safe.
That's a pretty hefty research group.
Yeah, yeah, it is. But anyway, you start looking at the increased fatalities, and then I was talking about the research program we got at the University of Idaho. Our fire season's over 30 days longer than it was in the 80s. Matter of fact, some of the projections that we've had here at the University of Idaho show that our fire season's growing by about 3 to 4 days a decade. And what's interesting is our research shows that the fire season is about 9 days longer into the season. It's getting about 9 days longer each year, and I always say, California is a classic example of that.
Oh
You look
shit,
the
they're year
last two
round.
last two seasons, California's been on fire right up through Christmas,
Oh yeah.
and
Well,
I
it's like the
think
the campfire. I mean, shit, that started off in November. The beginning of November. I believe
right,
it was
yeah,
November 8th, and it's 18,000 structures, 85 fatalities. I believe
oh,
5 serious firefighter injuries, and I think it was 153,000 acres that actually burned with intensity in fucking November. It's
right,
insane.
right, and this is not anything we've been seeing in the past, and so now I, I'm talking to these firefighters. They're working way longer into the season, and our pilot study in 2017 showed that with these fatigue science Redibands, we're able to find an alertness score on each individual.
Yeah, and you were talking about that in your webinar. It's called the safety model, and the DoD produced.
SAFTE, the safety model, and the algorithm were developed by the U.S. Army Research Lab, so it's extremely well validated, and again, the military's put that through a lot of the rigorous research and background, but we're able to come up with a score from 0 to 100. And anything 90 to 100, it's like being back in school. You're getting good grades. You're getting an A, 90 to 100. And you start getting below 90, then your awareness, your fatigue, you start showing fatigue. And we've been actually able to show that their fatigue or their alertness scores from start to finish at the end of the season, these guys are wearing down.
Oh yeah.
And that season ended in early October, and now you look, we should have some Redibands on some folks this year that are rolling. They may roll on into November, depending. It's hard to say what we're going to have for a fire season, but
No one's got a crystal ball. It's always hard to predict, and I hate making predictions, like I said, because I'm always fucking wrong.
I'll predict it, and then he got that one wrong.
Oh yeah,
I did. But if you look, we start throwing a month or two more of hard work, physical activity. There's two types of activity. You get it from physical activity, working hard all day. And then there's the other type of fatigue that comes from lack of sleep.
Yeah.
And that is the type of fatigue that's characterized by lack of alertness and your reduced mental and physical performance. And the physical fatigue, working a 14, 16, 18-hour day, we can overcome that fatigue by just getting a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
That's common sense. Well, it should be common
It's
sense.
not so common because,
but
looking at my Fitbit, like I was saying, man, I average about 6 hours of sleep a night, and it's trash sleep quality.
Oh, yeah. And so you mentioned sleep quality. We get quantity, so we can tell how many hours of sleep. We can tell what time you go to bed, what time you wake up. We don't do this in real time. Like I said, we protect all of the individuals that are part of our research population there. We protect them, but we're able to download that data and look at sleep quantity. And then we can look at sleep quality. And the biggest thing that has to do with sleep quality is how many times you wake up. And we call that wake after sleep onset. So let's say you go to bed at midnight. And
that's that WASO model, right?
Pardon?
That WASO acronym in your webinar?
Yeah.
Okay.
WASO. Yeah. Wake after sleep onset. And so we can tell how many times you wake up in the middle of the night and for how long you're awake. And what's interesting is what we looked at this group in this pilot study, their sleep on fire versus off fire. Well, their sleep quality went up a little bit because they're not waking up as much.
They're just dead ass tired and just crashing out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it's sleep latency. How quick does it take you to fall asleep? And I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but there's a significant difference between how fast they fall asleep on fire versus off fire. So when you're on fire, whether you're in a camp or you're spiked out, you're falling asleep faster. And we attribute it to you're just fatigued, you're dead dog tired, from what it's like, working a hard day and you just go to sleep.
I have some of those numbers for sleep quantity, not quality, but quantity. Off fire, you're averaging about 6.8 hours of sleep. Your average sleep onset is about 22:40. That's time. So
yes,
22. That's when you go to sleep is 10:40 at night, and you wake up at about 6:14 in the morning. And on fire, it's pretty interesting because on fire you're getting 6.2 hours of sleep, but you're going to bed earlier. You're going to bed about 10:30, but you're waking up at 5:15 in the morning, 5:16 in the morning.
Yeah.
But the deviation between those numbers is pretty crazy. It's you're going to sleep earlier, waking up, but your studies was suggesting that you're getting a better quality of sleep on the fire line.
Right. And again, these are our preliminary numbers. We've got 50 to 60 right now, so we'll have a bigger sample size. We'll be able to look at that at. Mm-hmm. And we didn't look at these spreadsheets are just enormous, but we didn't look at whether the average sleep time. You said 22 40 for when they off fire versus 22.
22:30.
They're going to bed earlier on fire, and they're waking up earlier. And we haven't looked at that we haven't ran the stats on that yet to see if that's significant. But off fire, they're staying up later, and they're waking up later. On fire, they're going to bed a little earlier, but they're getting up almost an hour earlier. And here's the deal: you can have better sleep quality, but it's the quantity that boils down to being able to reduce your fatigue levels. We got to have the Center for Disease Control. We got to have. They suggest 7 to 9 hours of sleep. 8 hours is best, and I've found that with myself. If you want those alertness scores, I mentioned that scale from 0 to 100. If you want to be making an A, get it up there into the 90s, you've got to be getting close to 8 hours of sleep consistently.
And that's every night.
Every night.
Yeah, you're not having like spikes in sleep. Okay. It's weird though. It's like this whole study that you're doing it's amazing. It truly is. And like I said, it was a very eye-opening study for me because, like I said, looking back at my Fitbit and the extremely low amount of sleep that I usually average, even off season, it's kind of eye-opening. And I understand that you did the research into like the detrimental impacts of what that lack of sleep has. You briefly touched on that subject. Let's go back and revisit that.
Okay. Sleep. Let me think here. For those that let me just back up for just a second here. The lack of sleep. Let me put that in terms of blood alcohol concentration.
Perfect. I'm glad you're going there.
If you go 18 hours without sleep, that's equivalent to 0.05% blood alcohol.
And that's 18 hours?
18 hours. If you go 21 hours, that's the legal limit.
You're at a 0.08.
0.08, yep. Now, 24 hours without sleep puts you at 0.10, so 10. So you go 21 hours without sleep, and that's like being legally drunk.
Yeah,
and that's the blood alcohol concentration. This is correlated. The U.S. Army's done it. There's been a lot of research on this, but that's what we got to looking at. I mentioned the fatalities. The number one cause of fatalities for wildland firefighters right now is cardiovascular events.
Mm-hmm.
And we can go into that one in a minute. Number 2 and 3 are vehicle and aircraft accidents. So what's happening, we don't know why, just like the Twisp. I read the Twisp report, and we're looking in there, we don't know what happened, what caused that to happen. But could it be, and this is what I've been running around through my brain, could it be that fatigue plays a substantial role in all this? So imagine you get up at 0500, you put in an 18-hour day, 18-hour work day, 16-hour work day, and then you drive home. You're driving home sometimes in the dark, sometimes down these windy dirt roads. Is it because you're in a reduced state of alertness? Yeah,
Holy shit.
It could be. Yeah, now let's talk about sleep. There's been just the benefits or the lack of sleep has been researched ad nauseum. There's been so much out there that's been researched. They know that if you get less than 8 hours of sleep, your time to physical exhaustion is decreased by 10 to 30%. In other words, you're going to get physically exhausted 10 to 30% quicker. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was looking at your other facts, the inadequate sleep on physical functions in your slideshow.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, the 10 to 30%, that's your time till you start getting fatigued. That's a lot, man.
10 to 30%. Yeah. And I'm teamed up with a research specialist right now that she works with, or a sleep specialist. She works with Olympic athletes. And I said this in my webinar. There's been so much research done with athletes looking at, because they have to know, that getting a good night's sleep. And when we think about that time to physical exhaustion, 10 to 30%, if you get less than 8 hours of sleep, it's critical for these Olympic athletes. As a matter of fact, the Seattle Seahawks, I've got one of those Redibands
Yeah,
on
you got
right
one of
now.
them on right now. I
The
can see it.
Seattle
Yeah.
Seahawks are using these
No
things
shit.
because they want their athletes, they need them to be able to perform. And if their physical exhaustion, anything's impaired, then that affects their performance. And so and that's what I've been saying. This is the mantra I've been using is wildland firefighters. I consider them tactical athletes.
Oh, absolutely. I keep
You're
preaching
out
that
there
all the
working
time.
your tail end off all day long, and you need to be treating yourself like an athlete. You need to be fully hydrated. Hydration levels. If you're just slightly dehydrated, that can affect you as well.
I was saying that that one slide that you had on the webinar that it was, I believe, 36% of them. In your study, you did that open study where people would submit their answers of contributing factors to the fatigue, and you said
Oh yeah,
hydration. Hydration was like 36% of the people.
yeah. They don't, well, I think 36% don't monitor their hydration or nutrition, and then I can't remember the percentage that said that they didn't monitor their water. And then we ask them, well, how much water do you drink? And most of them put a gallon plus or minus a half a gallon in a day. And
Which is
as
probably
you
not
well
enough.
know, being in your PPE, you need to be fully hydrated, and you're out there sweating. And the other thing is, if you consistently get less than 8 hours of sleep, it also affects your body's ability to sweat or
No shit.
perspire. Yeah.
That's
So
insane.
I mean, now, so what I'm trying to paint this great big picture of all these different factors that come into play. Could it be dehydration? Could it be nutrition? Could it be fatigue due to lack of sleep? Could it be fatigue due to a physical exhausting day? All these different things. All these different things come into play.
It's a very
Yeah.
multi-pronged approach that you're taking to this whole wildland firefighter fatigue study that you're conducting.
Right.
There's a lot of facets to this.
You got to look at the big picture. And if you listen to the webinar, I said this is like an onion. You got there to get to the core of it. You got to peel away all these layers to there, and we're not even getting close. We're just peeling off a few layers on the outer edge to take a look at this. But the other interesting thing and so we've been monitoring body composition as well on wildland firefighters, because if you look at the statistics on, I think it's 23%. NIFC had some data posted there. 23% that are of the fatalities are cardiovascular events. Inadequate sleep, routinely chronic fatigue from inadequate sleep, 6 hours. Research time and time again shows that it leads to coronary artery blockage, cardiovascular disease, stroke, congestive heart failure, all these different cardiovascular events.
So it has a huge systemic effect on your body. It increases your risk for, I'm looking at the list right now. It's irritability, cognitive impairment, memory lapse, loss of judgment, impaired moral judgment. Hallucinations. Let's see what else. Symptoms similar to ADHD. That one's interesting. Let's touch on that a little bit later, though.
Okay.
Impaired immune system, but your risk for CVAs, cardiovascular accident, that's what a CVA is, stroke, MI, all that shit just goes up exponentially. Even your incidence of cancer go up with lack of sleep.
That's crazy, isn't it?
That's insane to me.
Yeah. And it's, I think it all boils down to this, that when we get adequate amount of sleep, 8 hours, that our body goes through all these processes to repair itself.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're constantly or chronically fatigued, we don't get that. We don't get the body's healing. Our bodies take care of themselves. You know, we're an amazing we're an amazing complex piece of machinery.
Oh yeah.
And sleep takes care of. And you know, if you think about it, I was talking to someone yesterday. I was actually talking to a police officer, a couple of police officers in Boise about some of this research. And if you think about it, a lot of these diseases didn't start popping up until the invention of the light bulb. And now you throw in the uh, the fact that we have our cell phones, our iPads, we're looking at screen time all the time. You know, I was in a bad habit. I had to check all my likes and comments on social
It's that
media
little
before I'd go to bed. It'd
dopamine
take me
action.
30, 40 minutes. Well, I've wasted that much time trying to get sleep,
Oh yeah.
you
It's
know,
that.
where I could have just rolled over and shut my eyes and got to sleep. But like I said, the rates of cancer, all these cardiovascular diseases, just on the rise, it seems like. And I don't have any of those facts in front of me. I'm a firm believer in facts. Throw out the facts and figures and look at what we got. But it's all on the rise.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing too. It's funny that you bring up nutrition because I don't know if you've ever seen a fire lunch. Actually, no, you've seen fire lunches.
Mm-hmm.
That gentleman sent you a picture and like he didn't
Yep.
eat any of it. And what was the quality of that lunch?
The quality of that lunch was it was all sugars, and
Which is
you know
important though
we're
because we need
talking
that.
well a lot of carbs with very little protein, and this carbs, and I had to wonder. And I'll spin this back around, so bear with me for just a second. We were looking at what we call the witching hour, when most accidents and fatalities happen are approximately 1400 to 1800 hours, 2 to 6
Mm-hmm.
in the afternoon. Now let's say you get up at 6 a.m. and by the time 2 a.m. rolls around, you've already been after it for 8 hours. And if you just had a lunch, and we look at this I call it GI, high glycemic index. In other words, you got Skittles, you got candy bars, you got
Fucking
some
Uncrustables.
yeah, something, all this sugary stuff, and it gives you an insulin spike.
Mm-hmm. Which
So
also
what
causes
happens
fatigue.
after you get the insulin spike?
Yeah, you get tired.
Yeah, you have that crash, that insulin crash, and you come down, and I have no proof of this. I want to look into it more, but does that have something to do with it? If we could get some meals that don't have that high glycemic index, where you're not spiking your insulin,
Holy
you know, something
shit.
like oats and rice that doesn't, potato that, you know, that doesn't give you that big insulin spike. So your insulin, you know, rather than spiking up like this, your insulin just kind of stays steady. Uh, so I'm speculating here, but
No, hold on.
it
It makes real perfect sense actually, because not only are you super fatigued from the day before when you're working your ass off and you're up at 6 o'clock, so your 8 hour day is starting at 2 or is ending at 2 technically. When do we take lunch? Around that time, right?
yep.
Get a chance to reassess the fire. We kind of do that sometimes when we're eating.
Hmm.
Happens all the time. But now, I guarantee you, if you do more research on this and you find the numbers, those fatalities in correlation with a high glycemic lunch in combination with uh, fatigue, I guarantee you that's going to be a contributing factor in these firefighter fatalities.
I absolutely think you're right, and so we that's one of the things I want to start looking at is is that the case? And that, like you said, we may be able to prove it, we may be able to disprove it, but man, it sure makes you wonder, doesn't
Sure shit makes me wonder.
it?
Yeah, man.
Yep, yep, absolutely.
So,
So
yeah, that's God, man. It's a real wake up call, and this episode right here should be a real wake up call to any firefighter out there too.
oh yeah,
Get your sleep, man. Not only
yeah,
that,
get
get
your sleep.
quality sleep.
I can also tell you this, and I said this in the webinar, that, and like I said, athletes have been sleep in athletes has been researched like crazy. And Dr. Matthew Walker out of California, I forget which one of those institutes he's with right now, but he's one of the sleep gurus. He's written several books, published a lot of research papers on this. But he's got a great book if any of your interested called Why We Sleep, and he goes into so much detail about all this that and they've got this quote, and this should drive it home for all of us. Chronic lack of sleep across a season predicts a massively higher risk of injury in athletes.
That's insane. And that was from Walker's book.
I believe so. That if now, and I just said that you wildland firefighters are out there are tactical athletes. So just imagine this chronic lack of sleep across the season predicts a massively higher risk of injury in athletes.
And now, is that an operational, so we're huge into fitness. We PT all the time. Now, are we talking like some sort of injury regarding PT where you're just not as spatially aware, not as aware of your...
It's your cognitive awareness, your cognitive abilities. So let's say you're fatigued and you're on autopilot, and you're just not aware of your surroundings. And maybe you didn't see that root sticking out of the ground, you trip. And like I said, a lot of this, is it just sheer coincidence that slips, trips, and falls, accidents happen?
These are operational injuries you're specifically talking about.
Yeah, now I'm talking about operational injuries.
Okay.
Is it, are we talking sheer coincidence, or could it be that fatigue due to lack of sleep could be playing into this? It was like you and I mentioned earlier, we looked at our group, even when they were off fire, they were only getting 6.8, 6.7, 6.8 hours of sleep off fire. So they're not getting enough off fire to be able to adequately recover, to get themselves into that alertness score of 90 to 100.
And that's the safety model.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's our alertness scores that we find.
God, man, that's insane. Now, so you're saying if you're into the 68 percentile, that's when you're operating in that basically impaired cognitively.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So when you're down in that 60% or less, actually, I think it's less than, when you get below 70, that's where you get to that 0.08 blood alcohol content. Your reaction time is slowed by 30, 35% or more. And that's where your decreased levels of alertness, and then your risk of accident or injury is high. It's high.
So let me ask you this. What is the most common thing that we do that's non-operational, but we do it all the time? Driving, right? Did I lose you?
I'm getting some, if you can hear me, I'm getting some static feedback here.
All right.
Going on.
I'm sorry about that. How about now? Can you hear me now? Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. Stand by.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all good, man. No worries. And we're back. Welcome back.
Back on air.
Yeah. Shit happens. Technology. What can you do?
Yep.
So where were we at? Operational hazards. I think the most common operational hazard that we do on a day-to-day basis that we don't even think about is driving. So how does this, do you think that all of this lack of sleep and this cognitive impairment over the course of a season has a high contribution to the occurrence of vehicular accidents?
Well, I can't say that with, I don't have any research of my research to say that's happening, but let's just speculate for a minute. We've talked about how after 18 hours, your at 0.05 blood alcohol content equivalent. Not
Mm-hmm.
that you are, but that's the equivalent. Your reaction time is reduced, and even if you're 10 to 20%, your reaction times 10 to 20% reduced. And I love to use the analogy of, I've been taking boxing lessons for a little while now. That if I'm out in the boxing ring with somebody, and my reaction time is decreased even by 25%, a quarter, what are the odds that the other guy in the ring is going to be able to land a jab or a hook or an uppercut, one of those things? And I've been working with loggers as well on some of this stuff. But imagine you're out there in the woods around a piece of equipment, or there's a rock comes rolling down the hill,
Mm-hmm.
or you're cutting a snag, or a tree or something, and a limb comes down. And like I said, these could just all be sheer coincidences, but I don't buy into that. That I think, and probably some of them are, but if our alertness, if we're in that 90 to 100 on that alertness scale, and we're fully alert and cognizant, I think that is going to decrease our chances of being involved in an accident. And then, like I said, one of the things I don't know is when are these vehicular accidents happening? Are they happening on the drive home when we're tired and fatigued? You've been breathing smoke all day long. You're maybe a little bit dehydrated. You haven't had the adequate nutrition. And like I said, we can speculate all day long, but to me, it sure seems like that could play a role in it, doesn't it?
I think it absolutely does. I mean, the shit that we do and the things that we're asked to do, it's, I mean, if you were to go ask any MD, they'd probably look at you and you say, like, you've done what? So,
Yeah,
I mean, I've done
yeah.
some, I've done some questionable shit over the course of my career, but it never until now, until I'm 11 years deep in the game, that I've actually had a like cognizant thought about it. You know,
Oh, I know. Most of us, the
it's a
young
young man's
people I
game.
work with, I like to say we all, and I was your age once. We all feel 10 foot tall and bulletproof
Oh yeah.
at that point, and you don't ever think, well, this won't happen to me. And so one of my take home has been the, and we're with that pilot group we had a couple years ago in 2017. We're actually going to roll out some interventions this year. We've got the fatigue. I think you saw it on the webinar, that fatigue science app now,
Mm-hmm.
to where the guys and gals will actually be able to look at their alertness scores live.
And
And
that's in real time data.
yep, they can look at it in real time. And let's take you for example. You wake up on a fire here in July, and you see that you're in the 60 or 70. You only got 5 hours of sleep last night, and your alertness scores decreased. Well, if just by simply knowing that, that, hey, I didn't get all the rest I need today, so I'm not going to be at the top of my game. That's in itself, just knowing and understanding that you can remain more vigilant throughout the day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you can raise your situational awareness through this
Ex-
through
exactly,
this.
just through cognitive awareness. Like, God, man, I know I'm going to be tired, and I just got to stay on my toes all day long.
Yeah.
Don't don't have a letdown, so to speak.
No, I think that'd be a powerful tool, especially for those crew leaders, because they're the ones that are pretty much ultimately responsible for the safety and welfare of their crew. So if they're tired, which they work arguably harder than the guys on the ground, the guys and girls digging line, because their mental fatigue is probably going to be a lot more. So they're working a lot more up here. They may not be working as much physically, but
Yeah.
mentally, from a mental standpoint, crew Boston's hard, engine Boston's hard. I can't even
Yep.
imagine what a divs goes through, or a task force leader, because now they're also ultimately responsible for
So
whatever else.
we're actually going to expand out into that. We're going to have some of these fatigue science ready bands on some of those folks this summer to see not just the boots on the ground, but we're going to see how fatigued they're getting across the season, especially on a fire. You get out on a big fire, and these guys are in the tent half the night, printing up maps, getting ready to give you um, a report in the morning, to update you on the situation and things like that. So that's one of our next steps right now, or this summer, is to start creating interventions for the boots on the ground, but as well looking at what those folks that are making the decisions higher up, how fatigued they are, and then with them we can, it's pretty easy for them to be able to start these interventions as well. Hey, we're tired. Let's make sure we're making the right decisions here.
No, I think that'd be huge. That'd be hugely beneficial to whoever's on the ground, because it's just going to make the whole situation that much more safe.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we, are a firefighter. We protect life and property. When it boils down to it, that's our mission, right? Life and property.
Yep.
But we
Yep.
can't do that if we're essentially fucked up and tired all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So here's it's getting ahead of myself here, but in that webinar, I used the analogy, and I came up with this one on my own, so I'm kind of proud of it. But we service our equipment. When you're out there on the line, you check the oil in your truck, you sharpen your saw, you clean the air filter in it. So you take care of your equipment, right?
Yeah, but who takes care of yourself?
So that's what your body is, your most valued, prized piece of equipment you have. So why don't we maintain our bodies?
I think that's a cultural thing, to be really honest with you. It's a young man's sport, and it's a very A-type kind of industry that we're in. So I think a lot of it has to do with the culture.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, it is. And like I said, that goes back to that I'm 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And the other thing is, when I was a young man, I used to say, I'll get all the sleep I need when I'm dead.
I still
And
say that.
that's a culture thing.
But it's definitely changing my perspective. But I think that's important, though, because I think with what your study is going to do is cause that paradigm shift in the culture. And I think if we open our eyes and pull our heads out of our asses, so to speak, then we
Yeah.
can actually make that change and be that much safer, because safety is our number one priority.
Oh, yeah. You can replace structures, you can regrow trees, but you can't replace lives.
You cannot.
And man, that's just and you touched on it. You said it's going to take a paradigm shift.
It will.
And so why this can go to any business, anything. Why continue doing business as usual? Just because my grandpa did it that way, my grandpa farmed, my grandpa logged, doesn't mean there's not a better way of doing business.
I think it's important, though, that we change up the status quo and not get stuck in our old ways just because that's how we've always done them.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
important
And
to try
so
new
some of the
things.
conversation, I gave a talk to a bunch of ICs here a couple weeks ago for one of the agencies, and we were talking about this, and someone brought up, why can't we, we've got the money allocated for fire, and here's I should preface all this by saying I don't want there to ever be a Randy Brooks rule that says we can't work overtime, we can't get our
Good luck
hazard
with
pay
that.
today. So that is by no means my intent for anybody to lose out on any pay. But there could be, why not, if you can look at your alertness scores, through that app I showed on the webinar, and you can see that you're impaired, why not hold those people back and go ahead and pay them their hazard pay, whatever. Incentivize this. And there, like I said, there's no price on life. So why not? You could even incentivize this by paying them. Just say, we're gonna get some extra sleep, or get to bed early, sleep a little bit later in the morning. Just any little thing you can do to reduce your levels of fatigue.
Well, you're reducing risk at that point. So, I mean, I don't
That's
see why there
that's
would be a
just it.
problem with it, at least in my mind, but you know how that goes. So,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
everybody's going to think like that.
right. Anytime you can reduce risk, and that's that's critical.
Absolutely. So, let's brush on another topic. Now, in your webinar and in your studies, I've noticed that you've made a correlation between the upward trend we've had an upward trend, as you mentioned, of firefighter fatalities since the 80s, a steady incline. I've seen the graphics on your webinar. We've had a steady incline, uh, upward trend in wildland firefighter fatalities. We've also had a steady upward trend in wildland fire season length.
Hmm.
So I noticed that, at least this is what happened in my head. I noticed that you made a correlation between length and season and firefighters and how it correlates directly to firefighter fatigue.
Yeah, so that's what I'm just inferring here, but it sure makes sense, doesn't it? Fatalities are on the increase, but in the same token, our season is longer.
It is.
So with a longer season, just like what if the NFL were to play year round? Year round.
You'd have
There's
people
there's
dropping dead.
how many injuries you wouldn't be able to have a 53-man roster. You'd have to have a 150-man roster just because you're going to wear down. You're going to get fatigued, and like I said, that's eventually that reduced state of alertness that can lead to an accident. Not saying it does, but research shows it's very likely to happen.
Makes sense. Now, question from me to you is, are these effects of fatigue, are they a cumulative buildup? Like, say you sleep 4, 4, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5 over the course of a roll and so on and so forth. Now, does that stack up? Does it have?
Yes.
It does.
Yes, we call that you're accumulating sleep debt.
Okay, let's talk about sleep debt, because that fascinated me in the webinar that you put on.
Yeah. So sleep debt is what you just outlined. You get 4, 4, 5, 6, 4. If you're not getting the 8, then let's say in a week's time or even on a 14-day roll, you've accumulated that sleep debt.
Okay, and now,
And
oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
So, all right, so the sleep debt and the routine lack of sleep, that's just a given factor that we encounter over the season.
Right.
What do we do to mitigate this?
So when you get your 2 days off, take advantage and try to get 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of recovery. And we've found that when you can get 2 consecutive nights of 8 hours sleep, you can get back up close to that 90, that alertness score, where you're back in the green, so to speak. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
that makes sense, and it especially makes sense considering your hard numbers in your survey that was reported, the anonymous reportings.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
These guys are averaging 5.2 hours a night, plus or minus 3 hours, or 1.3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. That was what I didn't mention that early on, I don't think, but when we first started this, we sent out a survey. We had 428 responses, all wildland firefighters. We just asked them what and how much sleep again, this was self-reported, so this would be like you reflecting back on the season saying, yeah, I got 5 plus or minus 1.3, and then I think off fire they were saying they were getting 6 point something plus or minus
I think it was
1.
6.4 is what
Okay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
believe, if memory serves me correctly.
Yep. And so even that is not what the CDC, Center for Disease Control, says we need to be getting. Like I said, 7 to 9. And I questioned some of our folks about that. What's happening, and we call that sleep hygiene. Good sleep practices. And why aren't you getting the quality of sleep when you get home? Well, A, I'm glad to be home. B, the wife walks in. I haven't been around my kids for 2 weeks. Here, take the baby. It's your turn, kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah.
And so it's hard. Like I said, it's hard to get good quality sleep even when you're at home.
It's weird. And another thing that kind of like makes me wonder about the lack of sleep even at home, because we're getting better sleep on the fire line, ironically. But when we
Ironically,
come home, our quantity is more, but our quality is significantly less. Do you think that has anything to do with what we encounter in the field, since we're always operating at like a high level pace? Do you think that has some impact on our at home sleeping?
I can't prove it for a fact, but I have to wonder that maybe it doesn't. Some people have a hard time coming down. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you've been at a high level of alertness, or not alertness. That's probably the wrong.
Operational
Uh,
tempo.
yeah, high tempo. You've been working hard, and some people have a hard time letting down, letting go. And it's
I
hard
know
to
I
say.
do.
We haven't peeled that layer of the onion away yet, so I can't speak to that yet. But we're going to start trying to figure out. We're going to roll out some. So what we're doing with this data, with these Redibands, is called subjective data or objective data. Now we're going to start getting subjective, where they fill out a log and we talk about what they did the night before and then what they did in the morning, kind of thing.
Kind of like a
And
sleep log almost, or like a day-to-day activity log.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It asks, did you have any caffeine? Did you have any alcohol? And I'm not going down that road,
That's a
but
big rabbit hole.
yeah,
Alcohol.
that's a huge rabbit hole. We don't want to go down.
We're a
And
drinking
in my
culture.
webinar I talked about the impacts of alcohol and what it does. Alcohol doesn't lead to good quality sleep.
No, it doesn't.
It relaxes us. It helps us get relaxed and fall asleep, but we don't stay asleep.
It's funny that you mentioned that too, because right now I'm doing a challenge right now. For the month of June, I'm giving up all alcohol. No, just sober June, if you will.
Okay.
Dry June or something like that. Whatever. Really, it's kind of funny though, because it's just a bet between my buddy.
June.
Prohibition June. I like it. But yeah, it was just a bet between a couple of my buddies. We kind of like I bet you $20 I can't drink for a month. So it kind of stemmed out from there. But I've noticed that my sleep quality has dramatically improved. It's quite insane.
Oh yeah. Have you noticed? Are you remembering any of your dreams?
All of them. I started
Yeah.
dreaming. Period.
Isn't that crazy?
It's
Because
insane.
I've gone through the same thing. Trust me. And your dreams is what resets all the stuff in your body. We have to dream. It's called emptying out your garbage can every night. And alcohol prevents dreams happen in that rapid eye REM stage, and alcohol prevents that. And so, dang, I wish I had one of these sleep bands on you right now to see.
Feel free to send me one, man. You see how fucked up it is.
See how Prohibition June's treating you.
I guarantee you, it's been a lot better. That's for sure. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's definitely I'm definitely sleeping a lot better. But alcohol, yeah, definitely limit alcohol consumption, because that's like you said, a contributing factor in shitty sleep quality.
Oh yeah, alcohol, caffeine, 3 to 6 hours. Some people tolerate caffeine pretty well.
See,
Others
that's where my
don't.
vice is caffeine.
What's that?
My vice is caffeine. Caffeine and
Yeah.
nicotine. I can't live without it.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I try to limit mine. I try to shut it down after 3 in the. I have my last monster bang by 2 o'clock, and I try to shut it down after that.
Oh man. So, anyways, back to the sleep thing. So, in your accident survey, your survey, the people that reported on your survey, they were saying that 79% of them, 79% of the correspondents said that physical fatigue and labor were a contributing factor. Mental fatigue and season length, 73% said that was a contributing factor.
Mm-hmm.
Inadequate sleep due to a long shift or travel, 69%, and inadequate sleep / other factors. So like people slamming the shitter door at 3 in the morning, that was
Yeah.
61%.
Yep. So that other factors, someone in the tent snoring next to you, the porta potty doors banging all night, those kind of things. But yeah, physical fatigue and tiredness was the number one. So what we did in that survey, we asked them what they thought were the main contributing factors to accidents on fatalities on the fire line, and that physical fatigue and tiredness, mainly due to manual labor, I think was 79%. And then the mental fatigue from the long fire season was at 73%, I believe. And then inadequate sleep were the next two factors. So the top four factors basically were fatigue and sleep. And those two are interrelated. It's hard to separate. We get fatigue because we don't get enough sleep. Well, the physical fatigue from long days kind of thing. But if you get enough, like I said, quality of sleep, your body repairs itself. And so, yeah. And so that's what actually led us. We thought, okay, that's what got us into this, we were actually able to find this company that not only A, can we monitor their sleep, B, it gives us a fatigue score, alertness score. So we kind of hit the jackpot on being able to look at that. And so that's why we started looking at sleep and fatigue on and off fire as contributing factors are they contributing factors to accidents? So go ahead.
So that was a interesting thing too that I was going to mention. There's the mental fatigue thing, and this is where I wanted to tie the ADHD symptom from lack of sleep. Sometimes I've never really been aware of this, and this is kind of a self-reflection for me and kind of a wake-up call as well, but it's saying that sleep deprivation, it causes ADHD like symptoms.
Yeah. And so you get real similar to that.
It's pretty crazy that that's actually a symptom of it, because I thought I had fucking ADHD forever. Maybe I have adult onset ADHD, but in true scheme of things, I guess
mine has actually almost pretty much gone away. Like I said, I'm very rigid now in getting my 8 hours of sleep ever since I've been wearing one of these for over 3 years now, like I said. And I was probably ADHD as a kid for sure, but it seems like my
and look, you're a doctor now, so
have gone down. So it'll be interesting to see, for folks that feel like they have those symptoms, if they're able to get 8 hours of sleep, can that help alleviate some of those symptoms?
Well, how many?
The other thing, yeah, go ahead.
How many firefighters have you met that they're kind of just like that? How many? It's kind of a common thing. We always say, at least this is kind of a common catchphrase in the industry. It's ADHD. It's a blessing and it's also a curse. But how many? How many have you met?
I've actually had discussions with folks out there that does this type of job attract that type of personality?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Squirrel.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of first responders are the same, are like that.
I'm just wondering if it's kind of like magnified though, now that we have, and this is across all firefighters, EMS, police, and fire, everybody.
All first responders, yeah.
All first responders. This is kind of mirrored across the myriad of first responders, if you will. And all of them seem to be super ADHD type A personalities. And I wonder if, like you're saying, I wonder if the sleep deprivation thing kind of intensifies or magnifies that.
I don't know this for a fact, but I think maybe it could. Maybe it could.
It's crazy, man. Yeah.
Can we?
Yeah, we can.
I'll be right back.
No worries.
All right, hang on 1 second.
Oh, it's all good, man.
So, but anyway, yeah, is my daughter is interesting. My boys were Wildland Firefighters. I know I was probably ADHD as a kid. My daughter's an ER nurse.
Oh, no shit.
And she's absolutely, as a matter of fact, she's been after me to do this kind of thing, especially for those that work night shifts, study this fatigue on nurses. And so, her and I have had these conversations. She's addicted to that adrenaline rush in the ER room.
I think that kind of goes to without saying with us as well. We definitely share that similar quality.
Right, right. So it's, who knows? It just, like I said, how much of a coincidence is it?
I don't know if it's a
Or-
coincidence. So like, it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of shocking to like see that this data that you're putting out and how it relates to wildland fire and well all first responders too. So
yeah, well, interestingly enough, I said the number one cause of fatalities for wildland firefighters is cardiovascular events.
mm-hmm.
The same holds true for police, ambulance drivers, all first responders.
Probably even military too.
Yeah, and so I also have to wonder, stress. When we stress out, our bodies produce cortisol,
Mm-hmm.
the stress hormone, and cortisol can really wreck us if we're doing. I've read a lot of research on what it can do, but I have to wonder if that all these, like I said, it's like a layer of all these things that are surrounding the issue there at the core of the onion. There's so many things that, is it the lack of sleep? Is it the stress? Is it the diet? Is the hydration? Breathing smoke.
Oh yeah. Well, those CO
It's
levels, it binds to your hemoglobin and it actually takes over the oxygen binding. Like it binds more efficiency with hemoglobin than oxygen does,
oh yeah,
which is
yeah,
fucked up.
exactly. Yep. And then when one of the things I talked about in the webinar was inadequate sleep, anything less than 8 hours of sleep, that can also lead to reductions in blood oxygen saturation.
So
And
your
so,
SpO2s even go down.
what's that?
Your SpO2 even goes down.
Right, right. So you see this picture I'm painting? I got this big canvas, and I got all these different colors of paint that I don't know if you can just put your finger on the bullseye and say this is the problem.
Well, it seems like you're not even painting a picture. You're painting a fucking hurricane that's a perfect storm. That's what's kind of crazy to me because now it's like not only are we sleeping and breathing, working environment in the smoke, which affects our, our blood, our O2 sats.
Yeah.
We're also potentially sleeping in smoky areas, which interferes with the quality of sleep. In combination with that, we're sleeping less and less and less. The season is also getting longer and longer and longer, and we're asked to do more with less. So it kind of seems like you're painting the perfect storm, the picture, the big picture of things, all kind of boiled down to working conditions and lack of sleep.
Yeah, you're
That is,
right. It is a hurricane, the perfect storm. Yeah, isn't it crazy?
it is too. And you even go further into it with the health risk that we suffer from a lot of mental health issues in the Wildland Fire Service. And it says the health risks in here. It could lead to, or it has a contributing factor. So lack of sleep is a contributing factor to personal well-being,
Yep.
depression, alcoholism, drug dependency, obesity, diabetes, all this
It's
other shit, and it's insane. It blows my mind.
Oh yeah, and like I said, that's all. I'm not just blowing smoke there. This is all research that's been conducted. Depression, alcoholism, those two lead to each other. Drug abuse. I mean, obesity. When you start, for me, when I start drinking, I start eating, I start snacking. And that's not a good
It's
thing
the
at
perfect
bedtime.
medication.
Yeah, perfect medication. Yeah,
Food.
but yeah, food is a, food is it a drug? There's this is a tangled web, and it's very complex.
Even the long-term consequences of it too. It affects your immune system. You have compromised immune system. You have increased risk of cancer. It doubles your risk of
Oh yeah,
cancer.
yep.
And it increases your factor for Alzheimer's and other cognitive issues down the road.
Yeah,
And we
isn't that
live our
crazy?
entire lives like this. Some people do this shit for 30, 40 years, and it's insane.
Exactly. And nobody's looked at these wildland firefighters or first responders over, as far as I know, we're going into our third year here of looking at, we call it longitudinal research, looking at body composition, looking at fatigue. No, there's been other studies where they've looked at people for long term, trying to look at what kind of diseases they're getting and things like that. But when you start looking at this sleep, what's going to happen to us 20 years down the road?
Yeah, that's kind of an eye-opening thing as well. It's like, what are we doing to ourselves? And we've been
Yeah,
doing it this way for how long now?
for since Smokey the Bear
Since Wag Dodge.
yeah, got rescued. No, I don't know, but it's going on. It's been going on for a long time, and so that makes me think maybe I need to do a survey of those that have retired, that did fight fire all their lives, and just ask them some simple questions, maybe some health screening or something.
I think that'd be an interesting thing to take a study on, just because we always hear, at least it's just kind of like the really shitty thing, kind of a dark side of fire, but we always hear that once you retire, you got about 5 years.
Yep, and that, interestingly enough, my brother and sister are both police officers, and so I'm kind of in tune. We've correlated some of this with that, but you're right. Once I happen to wonder if it's maybe not all first responders, that your average lifespan after retirement is 5 years or less.
That's terrifying.
It's scary, and this is it's a sobering fact. And that gets back down to my analogy of, we service our equipment. Let's take care of our most valuable piece of equipment. That's our bodies.
I agree. And we all too often neglect our body in the sake of glory, I guess you could say. At least that's what it seems like to me. I mean, like I said, man, we need that cultural shift, that paradigm shift of how we operate and what we do with our bodies. I think we need to have that eye-opening experience.
Right. And you mentioned it earlier about a culture. It's just a culture change, and it probably wouldn't take too long to make that paradigm shift or that cultural change. You just say, folks, we need to start getting as much sleep as we can. Good quality sleep. Don't take sleeping pills or other things to help us get sleep. Because that doesn't get you the natural sleep that you need.
No, it doesn't. If you're taking Ambien and stuff like that, if your doctor prescribes you Ambien, you might want to wean yourself off and actually try and get more of a holistic approach to that. I think. I mean,
Oh yeah, I give this talk, and I'm not afraid to say it, because I mentioned earlier in this podcast that my wife was in a head on and spent 4 months over at Harborview Hospital in Seattle, and I went, I don't know how many, I went at least a week and a half with very little sleep, 2 weeks probably sleep at all, before um, my doctor actually heard about this and prescribed me some Ambien.
I'll never
And
take that shit
I got,
again.
I got hooked on it. And when I started wearing this Rediband 3 years ago, when I started doing this research on what Ambien can do for us, and the fact that if you're taking sleeping pills, that increases your cancer rate, that increases your chances of being in an accident, or I think there's even some stuff that says, some research that says that you're more likely to die.
Taking
You're
Ambien.
Yeah, you're
Jesus.
more likely to die. I think it was 4 or 5 times more likely to die if you're taking sleeping pills.
That's in your
And
sleep, or
yeah, it's a memory eraser and the other thing. And so I had a heck of a time getting off of Ambien, and I've actually, so I'm free and clear now. But I look back at, when, like I said, when I started that thing, and it doesn't improve your sleep, the good sleep.
yeah,
It just,
you're being sedated,
they just,
and
it's like alcohol. It creates a sedative feeling. It
yeah,
just sedates you a little bit during sleep onset, but it really doesn't. It really doesn't give us the kind of sleep we need.
and that's the thing, man. Is like a while back, probably about 5, 6 years ago, a doctor prescribed me Ambien for some sleeping issues, and I took one. I had sleptwalked for 3 days. I had an adverse reaction to it, of course, but still, it scares me.
Yeah, the first time I took one, I was on I can remember exactly where it was. I was in a couch chair like thing, and I took one, and that's where I woke up wondering where I was.
Holy
So,
shit, man.
yeah,
Jesus. That's terrifying.
yeah.
That, and it doesn't really help. It doesn't really do much for you.
Huh. Huh. So
God, man.
our best bet's just get some good sleep. Try to do it on your own. There's some natural remedies out there. In my webinar, I talked about melatonin as being a good alternative because our body produces it.
Yeah, it's
But
a natural
if you've got
substance.
cardiovascular history, then it constricts. It's a vasoconstrictor, and so it kind of constricts your blood vessels. So that could be an issue. Magnesium is a good. People take magnesium. I'm not. I'll tell this out to the folks out there listening. I'm not a medical doctor, so if you've got issues, seek medical advice. Get
Oh,
medical
yeah.
attention.
Jesus, man. Well, shit, man. I mean, we, this is intense. And it's a lot of value out of your study. And I think that everybody should be absolutely privy to what's going on, which the sleep study that you're doing. And if you guys Google assessing wildland firefighters' sleep and fatigue while on the fire assignment, it's going to be through the Northern Rockies Fire Science Network. Uh, that'd be nrfirescience.org. You can find that article that basically breaks down the whole thing, and then you can find that webinar as well. If you guys get a chance to look at that, pay attention because, well, it's eye-opening. Look at that Fitbit and look at how much you've been sleeping over the past few months, because I can tell you from my point of view, I've been sleeping like shit and I don't even know it.
Yep, that's most people don't. We're walking around in a state of reduced alertness,
Practically
but
a zombie.
like a zombie, and we're just going through the routines. And now that, like I said, the first thing is just becoming aware of the fact, and that's been big for me and all the folks we've been working with. And you start looking at some of that stuff, like that webinar. You look at the data we show on there, and it's an eye. It sobers you up.
Oh yeah, it's eye-opening. But I think it's important that it's out there because now you're raising awareness to this whole thing.
Yeah, and that's what I don't, like I said. Hi, I'm Randy Brooks. I'm an Ambien addict. The first thing you got to realize is there's a problem before you can start addressing, making gains in addressing the issue. You got to recognize that there's a problem.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, as long as we can identify these problems and actually address them properly, I think that we can actually make some headway and, reduce that risk of operational injuries.
Yeah, and that's what I've been talking to, especially some of our college students, like I said, that we're monitoring here, and some of them said, "Yeah, I just need to get off social media in the evening. When I know I'm tired, I just need to maybe cut my call home short. If you got a spouse or girlfriend that you need to, or boyfriend or someone you need to talk to, just say, "Hey, I'm safe. I'm really tired. I got to get some sleep," and call it.
It's hard. It's hard to say that because, you want to talk to your loved ones,
Oh,
but,
yeah,
you
I
can't,
get it.
yeah,
I
you
get it.
can't take care of your loved ones if you're, potentially injured or hurt or even worse, dead. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, man, I think that's about the tie-in point. I think we've covered just about damn near everything regarding sleep and your study.
We went down a lot of rabbit holes, but anyway, I appreciate your time. And like I said, everybody, the biggest thing is everybody just understand that even when you're tired, just understand the fact and stay vigilant out there. And most of all, stay safe.
Excellent words of advice from Dr. Randy Brooks. So, Randy, at the end of the show, I usually like to give the opportunity to give you give out a like a cheers, a kudos. Hey, this is my homie, to whoever you want, mentor, firefighter, whatever. So, go ahead and give a shout out, man. Who would you like to give a shout out to?
Well, I just give out a shout out to all the wildland firefighters out there. There's quite a few of them that are helping us out with our study. And I think I said this earlier, while everybody's rushing to get the heck out of Dodge, you all are rushing in, risking your lives. You're up against the flames, and you're all my heroes. And this is not an academic exercise for me in publishing. This is an exercise in trying to prevent accidents out there. And it doesn't have to be on the fire line. Driving home, you're tired, those things. Like I said, you all are my heroes. Be safe.
Dr. Randy Brooks, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, bud. Appreciate it.
Right on, man. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. And, take into consideration what Randy here is saying, because, well, your life could depend on it. And certainly improve your life, the quality of life, too, if you actually take care of your sleep and stop drinking all the time, because, well, apparently it's a drinking culture. So, yeah, pump the brakes, guys. Lay your head, rest, get adequate quality sleep. Dr. Brooks, hey, man, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again. Thank you.
Right on. Thanks for listening to The Anchor Point, guys. Later. Holy shit. That was intense. At least it was intense for me. I don't know about you guys, but it's definitely an eye-opening little study that he's doing. Well, it's not little. It's actually huge. I mean, I know during my season, I probably sleep maybe 4 or 5 hours every night during fires. So, yeah, sleep, it's important. You need to recover. Dr. Brooks, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, man, and giving us some insight onto what we can do about combating fatigue in the wildland front there. Definitely appreciate you being on the show, man. That was cool. Fascinating shit. Thank you. Well, guys, keep it tuned. Keep it locked in here to the Anchor Point podcast, and we definitely got more stuff coming out. Maybe doing something a little bit big here down the road, and I'm definitely excited about that, but I can't really reveal what's going on. So, stay tuned. It's the only way you're going to find out there. Definitely swing by our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You know the game. Go by, tag us in your photos. We like to repost stuff. So if you guys got something cool or you want to be on the show, slide into those DMs or shoot us an email at anchorpointpodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, there's a lot of talent out there, and I want to hear your stories. And I want to share that story with everybody out there. So once again, guys, thank you for listening to the Anchor Point podcast. Catch you on the next one.